Good day. My name is Felipe Salvosa II of the Department of Journalism of the University of Santo Tomas. Today, I will present the current picture of the Philippines-China maritime dispute, focusing on the Spratly Islands, or what we call the Kalayaan Island Group, and Scarborough Shoal. I will begin with an overview of China's moves in the region, as well as the Philippine claims, before discussing the current flashpoints and how the situation relates to the issue of Taiwan and the response of the United States and the rest of the international community. So let me start with a brief rewind of the situation. So I want to start with this small rock on the South China Sea called Scarborough Shoal. So Scarborough Shoal, known in the Philippines as Baho de Masinloc or Panatag Shoal, is only 120 nautical miles from the Philippine province of Zambales. So it's on uh, the western side of the Philippines. And it is well inside the Philippine exclusive economic zone. So this is an old map from 1734, which shows to you that this encircled area here, which is the Scarborough Shoal, has been mapped as part of the Philippines as early as the 1700s. And for decades in the previous century, the shoal functioned as a traditional Filipino fishing ground. And the Philippines has conducted surveys in the area. It is part of the routine patrols of the Navy and the Fisheries Bureau, and it was included in all of the official maps. So as far as the Philippine side is concerned, there was no Chinese presence in Scarborough Shoal following World War II. Now there happened to be what we can call a turning point in 2012. So in 2012, a Philippine Navy ship attempted to apprehend Chinese fishing vessels who have been going to the Scarborough Shoal, harvesting endangered species in the lagoon, which is inside the reef. So what was China's response? It sent maritime surveillance ships to block the entrance to the shoal, to the lagoon, and prevent Philippine Navy personnel from apprehending the Chinese fishermen. So there was a 2-month standoff. To cut the long story short, the US brokered an agreement in which both China and the Philippines will pull out of the area. However, while the Philippines honored its commitment and pulled out, China did not. And then since then, China has kept its ships in Scarborough Shoal permanently. And since then, it has held control of the shoal. So we can consider it a defining moment of China's efforts to strengthen or solidify its control of the area, having been able to seize the Scarborough Shoal using Coast Guard and militia, and without using Navy warships, no? Therefore, it was able to seize the shoal without triggering a war. Now, separate from the Scarborough issue is the Philippines' claim over the Spratly Islands, which the Philippines calls the Kalayaan Island Group, no? Or at least the portion of Spratlys that the Philippines is claiming. So the Philippines claims the Philippine claim is based on history, as I've shown you with the map earlier, and its efforts to occupy the area, and the rule of law, international law, as we will discuss later. So, under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, a coastal state, which is the Philippines. Philippines is an archipelago and has a huge coastline. So coastal states are entitled to a 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone within which it has sovereign rights, to explore all the resources there. And any country who might want to explore the area will have to seek formal permission from that coastal state. So I would like to take note that Scarborough Shoal is well within this exclusive economic zone. Now, has China has established what we call what China has delineated what it calls the 9-dash line, as seen here by the dotted lines in the blue area, where it treats the South China Sea as a giant lake, and therefore it tries to enforce its claim. But as we shall show later, the 9-dash line claim that it has drawn in the South China Sea has no legal standing. So after World War II, in the 1950s and 1960s, there have been Filipino civilians and military units who have gone to and occupied certain areas of the Spratlys. And in 1978, President Ferdinand Marcos Sr. issued a presidential decree that created the Kalayaan Island Group and made it part of the Western Island province of Palawan. So the Philippines therefore has administered the Kalayaan Island Group continuously, no? And it has a civilian political unit, and the area has also has military facilities like airfields, and it also conducts local elections. Okay. Now, let's go to the 2016 arbitration award. So following the standoff in Scarborough Shoal in the Bajo de Masinloc, the Philippines went to the United Nations body, which is the Permanent Court of Arbitration, and it won that arbitration proceeding. So, according to the tribunal in The Hague, China's historic claim based on the nine, and also based on the nine dash line, is invalid, and that uh, features in the South China Sea, including the Ayungin Shoal, no, are part of the Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone, and that China violated sovereign rights of the Philippines, no, and not just for interference, but also environmental damage. So, on the side of the Hague Arbitral Tribunal and the Philippines, the award is final and binding, although China refuses to recognize it. China did not participate in the arbitral proceedings. So, since occupying the Scarborough Shoal in 2012, and despite the arbitration loss, China has been steadily strengthening its presence. In 2024, Beijing announced Scarborough as a nature reserve. Um, it established an environmental stewardship, and it basically justified its presence in the area. And these moves gave it some jurisdiction under Chinese law to regulate fishing activities, and even build some infrastructure. And then what China did was to intimidate Philippine vessels through the use of water cannons, as we have shown here earlier in our first image here. And the use of these water cannons have injured Filipino crew members. Okay, and this is what the analysts have described as a gray zone tactic, a Chinese model of getting control of an area in an incremental manner and avoiding naval warfare, and then slowly building up uh, an administrative claim, and to make it appear legitimate. One of the latest episodes in the area uh, is the water cannon attack in September of 2025, where Chinese Coast Guard vessel broke the window of a ship of the Bureau of Fisheries, the Philippine Bureau of Fisheries, and there was one person injured in that attack. Now, let me go to a different shoal, Ayungin Shoal. I was not able to show it in the map earlier, but Ayungin Shoal is also part of the Philippines exclusive economic zone. But this area presents a very high risk of confrontation. So this image here shows the Ayungin Shoal. And this shoal is currently hosting a grounded Philippine vessel called the BRP Sierra Madre, which is a Philippine strategy. No, it grounded the vessel there to keep a permanent presence and perhaps to deter China from also establishing or getting hold or seizing that area called Ayungin Shoal. So to counteract, what China has been doing is to impose a blockade, no, sometimes engineering deliberate collisions with Philippine vessels, no? Also swarming Philippine vessels with its numerous maritime militia vessels. China's also been using helicopters and drones, and of course, water cannons, and even interfering with Philippine communications. So as you can see, there's a ship there, and there are Philippine uh, Navy personnel in the BRP Sierra Madre. So you could imagine there has to be regular resupply missions, not just for food, but also for construction materials to repair the ship, which you can see is very rusty and is in danger of collapsing. So China's blockades have been somewhat working, and what Beijing wants to achieve is to force Manila, to abandon the BRP Sierra Madre, to force it to collapse or to force the Philippine Navy personnel into hardships so that they can abandon it. They will abandon it and then give control of the area, the Ayungin Shoal, to China. No? So much like what it had done to Scarborough Shoal. Now, we cannot talk about um, the South China Sea issue, no, on its own. The strategy of China in the South China Sea is part of a larger strategy to deal with Taiwan, which it considers to be a renegade province. No? As you can remember from history, Taiwan is where the nationalists fled to following the civil war in the mainland, where they established Republic of China uh, in that island of Taiwan, which is above the Philippines, and it used to be called Formosa. So China also is pursuing a larger strategy on how to counteract an alliance in the area that is led by the United States. So China wants to dominate the region, so that it can give free rein to the People's Liberation Army Navy in its southern area. And of course, it wants to control access to the area, including deterring or even denying access to the US, and of course, controlling the sea lanes surrounding the area. So China wants to secure the South China Sea area so that it can operate, around the Taiwan area without hindrance. Okay. So as you can see, the Philippines, the Philippine geography is very critical to the defense of Taiwan. The map shows you the northern area of the Philippines. Okay. So in the northern Philippines, there are routes that US and Japanese forces can use, to try to help Taiwan in case of an invasion. So therefore, the Philippines is indispensable in any scenario that will involve Taiwan, no? And so you can understand China's actions towards the Philippines, no? So there are tactics of intimidation, okay? It expresses protest whenever the Philippines makes moves that favor the United States, including increasing the access of the US military to Filipino bases. So we have what we call the EDCA, or the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, which basically gives US access to key military facilities in the Philippines for refueling and other activities. No? And of course, it has been stretching Philippine resources in its EEZ, including in Ayungin Shoal, and it regularly conducts operations to try to deter, block, and harass Philippine vessels who are conducting resupply missions in the Spratly Islands. Okay, so China's actions in the Philippines can be viewed as techniques of blockade, no, as activities of escalation, no, even without warfare. Okay, um, and there are maritime choke points that China seeks to control. And apart from that, information and electronic warfare. No? So the South China Sea dispute, no, is not not just a minor sideshow. No, it can be viewed as a vital training ground, no, or it could be um, staging ground for when a full-blown crisis in Taiwan, no, blows up in the region. Okay. Now, the United States and the Philippines, no, under the current president, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., the son of the late dictator, which I referred to earlier as Marcos Sr., no, they have grown closer compared with the previous president, Rodrigo Duterte, who made a pivot towards China. So both sides, Manila and Washington, no, have made clear commitments to a post-World War II mutual defense treaty. So in this mutual defense treaty, an attack on a metropolitan area in the Philippines will obligate the United States to defend an old ally, former colony, the Philippines. Okay, and then there are many activities, no. But the message from the United States is that the Philippines is an important pillar under its U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy. Okay. So you can see here the proposal to add more locations under EDCA, the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. And these new EDCA locations are Taiwan facing, no? And you can imagine how it has angered Beijing. Now, Japan is also growing closer to Manila no, and it has provided some help, no, to the Coast Guard in terms of helping in surveillance, no. Um, there are joint exercises, no, with the US and the Philippines, and active discussions linking the maritime issue, no, and also talking about the security, in terms of what happens in case of a Taiwan conflict. Okay. Uh, Other dialogue partners of the Philippines, no, through the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, no. The Association of the Southeast Asian Nations is an 11-member bloc of countries in Southeast Asia, which is the primary dialogue venue in the region, no. So Australia, South Korea, and Europe are dialogue partners, no? So Australia has been voicing support and deploying support patrols, no, and also helping in capacity building. Okay, South Korea is also helping in maritime security, and the countries of France, the United Kingdom, no, and even the European Union, no, has oftentimes spoken out against Beijing's intimidation efforts, and also support for the 2016 arbitration ruling, and have also been calling out uh, China, no, and speaking in favor of freedom of navigation in the South China Sea. No. The ASEAN, as I mentioned, is an 11-member bloc of Southeast Asian countries, no? And it has continued negotiations for a code of conduct, no, with China in the South China Sea. But the negotiations have been slow, although they continue the dialogue process. Okay. Now, let me, yeah, so this is the recent ASEAN summit in Kuala Lumpur. Okay. So let me finish with some final thoughts. Why is it important to look at the Philippines-China dispute? We can describe it as one of the front lines in a bigger regional issue. Okay. So the episodes in Scarborough and Ayungin, no, these are not minor and isolated disputes. These are symptoms or manifestations of China's long-term ambition, no, to dominate the security of Asia and to prepare, no, for whatever blows up in its bid, no, to reclaim Taiwan, okay, which is something that is anticipated in the future. Okay. The Philippines is geographically involved, no, in this dispute. The Philippines, in particular Luzon, no, the northern tip of the Philippines, no, that's the island of Luzon, is very close to Taiwan. Okay, so therefore, any security planning and strategy in the Indo-Pacific, no, will have to involve the Philippines. Okay, and finally, the Philippine arbitration victory in 2016 and how it is implemented, no, is widely seen in the international community as an important test case or an important case study for the defense of an international rule of law or rules-based order. So if China, no, if China gets its way in this part of the world, then it could get away with doing the same in other parts of the region. Okay, so it's a conflict between whether international rules-based order prevails or unilateral actions, no? In the case of Beijing, refusing to recognize the 26 arbitration ruling. So therefore, it is not simply the defense of maritime resources in the exclusive economic zone. It is not a matter of defending reefs or shoals or lagoons, no, or access to rich fishing grounds, no. It is a matter of principle, no. It is a matter of whether international law, international rules-based order, the law of the sea, no, prevails over sheer force of an emerging power. Thank you very much. It is a matter of principle, no? It is a matter of whether international law, international rules-based order, the law of the sea, no, prevails over sheer force of an emerging power. Thank you very much.